Yeah, I'd like to take some time today to share with you what we call the Dashlane mission team pitch process. Basically, it's how do we choose what we work on, how do we start the team, and basically how do we do prioritization, and that's always something difficult, I guess, in all companies. Just a quick words on myself and Dashlane. I'm Guillaume Marron. I'm one of the co-founder of Dashlane. I'm VP engineering there. We are a password manager. So we help our user manage ID and payments online. As an opening note, I would like to share something, which is I find prioritization to be a bit like sports. In the sense that if it doesn't hurt a bit, it usually means you are not ambitious enough. I found prioritization to be very hurtful at Dashlane, and I hope that this is because we are very ambitious. Why is that? In the recruitment process, we always focus on assessing if a candidate is motivated by the product, is motivated by the vision, cares about the product, has tried the product, and so on. And so at the end, you end up with so many people who cares about the product. And so there is something I'd like to have in mind through the presentation is that if prioritization is frustrating, is painful, I find it usually a good thing because it's because everyone cares in the company. So that's something to keep in mind while we go through the presentation. And this presentation does not aim at explaining how you guys should do things. It's more like to present you how we do things in the hope it can help you experimenting some processes. So a bit of context, we created the company 10 years ago out of school with Bernard Liotto, who was already a successful entrepreneur at that time. 10 years later, a bit more than 10 years now, we are like 275 employees in Paris, Lisbon, and New York. We have 40 million B2C customers and 10K enterprise using the product. And our scale is basically we have about 20 product and or engineering teams working at any given time. So a bit of context in terms of where do we are in terms of agility, so you understand the process we have today. It's important to understand a bit the past before looking at now. What we've tried to do is to evolve our organization iteratively as we need to scale, because from 3 people to 270 people, it's not the same. We started in a garage mode, of course, as everyone. We actually did not start in a garage, but in a basement of an engineering school. We moved 5 years later to from what we thought was agile to what is really agile with proper training, and so we try to scrum by the books. We set up a portfolio process to track everything we do from a roadmap perspective. We set up OKRs, of course, to track objectives. Then we evolved at some point from a platform-focused organization to a business-focused organization. Before the Android developers were working together, the iOS together, and now we work in the feature teams. We continue to evolve that in mission teams. The difference between mission team and business team is that mission team has a clear goal that is time-bound in a sense, versus the business team who are more long-living business teams. And recently we revamped what we call the drag track process, which is how do we invest both in the tech stack and in the business itself, in the product itself. Well, this year, as everyone else, I guess, we are learning how to work from home. Obviously, that was not the plan, but this is what we are learning today, and so far it's working pretty well. So let's enter into the specific. The question is really how do we choose wisely what we do? How do we maximize the chances of success? How we discover ideas? How we can best serve our customers? How do we choose between the different ideas and so on? So first thing first, we need to set up a strategy and to have a framework to follow how we progress towards that strategy. So we are using a framework called OKR. It's a framework used since the 70s, introduced by Intel, made popular by Google to simplify. I assume most of you are familiar with OKR, but in a nutshell, an objective is where do I want to go, and a key result is how will I know I'm going into the right direction, how will I measure that I reached my objectives. We use OKR at the company level. It's defined by the exec team. It should be consistent with the budget, of course. It can be used to actually describe the assumption of the budget. And the KRs can be reviewed and adapted every quarter, because sometimes you need to reforecast the budget. But the objectives should ideally remain stable in time, because a reforecast does not necessarily change your objective unless you are pivoting or something else. An example is delight our customers and collect the rewards. So this is a fake OKR. This is one KR could be increase the B2C NPS from X to Y. Another one could be increase the revenue and so on. So those are very tangible, very easy to measure metrics. So now that we have defined what is our strategy and we have a framework to follow that strategy, we need to find out, okay, what do we want to do? So that's discovery and ideation. So there are a lot of sources. I will go quickly through each of the sources. It's very important because before prioritizing, you need to identify what you want to do, of course. So what we have is data and analytics first. The data team is helping us in several ways. They are doing analysis on how the users are using our products, behaviors, and so on. They are also doing autonomously some deep dive analysis. Why are premium users churning? Is it because they've stopped using the product? Is it because they had a payment issue? And they are doing recommendation on the things we could do to improve the business. And then, of course, they support other teams into the discovery phase. Of course, customer support, it's obvious, getting insight from our users, getting every Dashlaners close to the users by having a user support day, with each mission team to be really part of the process. We have a PSNI team, a product research team. Their goal is to understand the user. So I would say it's there is the data team and there is the product research team. One is very quantitative, the other one is more qualitative, about understanding the user, doing things such as market research, market benchmark, surveys, and so on. And one tool they use is a product board to get insight from both customers and employees. It's a tool where customers and employees can submit new ideas, vote for ideas, and provide insight about ideas. So all of that bring us with a lot of ideas, and now maybe we can prioritize. But actually, what we found out is that at this stage we cannot really prioritize, because if we do a parallel with the marketing world, what we have is unqualified lead or unqualified ideas. We just have a bunch of ideas, but we don't have enough information to do a proper prioritization. We don't know how much effort it will take, what we can get out of it, and so on. And so what we've set up recently, 6 months ago, is the pitch process, which is how do we translate ideas into concrete initiatives? How do we qualify ideas to have qualified mission teams? So what is our pitch process? It's very similar to a startup who is pitching his ideas to investors, but here it's a team who pitch an idea to the exec team for resources. So we have to formalize a plan, to give the context, to explain what we hope to achieve, to request some funding. It can be people, budget, time. And we do that whenever it makes sense. There is not a specific time to pitch, and every time a mission is pitched, it is either directly rejected, or most of the time it is added into a maintained backlog of qualified or ready missions. So how do we do that? So first we have the discovery phase I described earlier. Then we will have either a product manager for business-driven mission teams, or maybe a staff engineers for technical mission teams who will take the lead on pitching a mission. He would prepare the pitch deck. He will iterate with stakeholders, and he will do a first pre-pitch with the CPU and the CTO. He will get more feedback, adjust his pitch, and eventually go and pitch to the exec team, the mission team. And after that, of course, will come the prioritization process, but I will talk about the prioritization process itself a bit later in the day. And sometimes we need to fast track things because of legal or business requirements or blocking technical issues, of course. But we still try to pitch any mission teams, even things that we have to do no matter what, because it helps creating the fair framework for all the business teams. So what's the template for the pitch? The first item is, of course, what business problem do we want to address? What opportunity do we want to use? Then what OKR will we use to make this problem or opportunity more concrete? And how is it tied to company OKRs? Then we would ask the data team and the PSNI team, the product research team, to add some background on the problem, like leverage data, leverage insights we have from product board, for instance, or from user surveys. We will build a strategy and look at the risk and how we can mitigate those risks. And then we will try to assess the quantified impact. How is that different from the OKRs? The OKRs is not always like revenue or active users, but it's still important for the exec team to understand what will be the impact in terms of revenue or active users or other major metrics. And that is usually done by the analytic team because it's very hard to predict exactly a business impact. Of course, as this is a kind of a funding exercise, we need to list the skills needed to achieve the mission, the staffing, to give an estimate of when do we think we will achieve this objective, of course, and then to give a confidence indicator so the exec team can balance between high risk, high reward missions and low risk, low reward mission, or all fully high reward, low risk missions, but that's usually not the case. So there are a lot of things in the pitch, of course. And what I've done is I've tried to build a very, very simplified version of a pitch that I would like to walk you through today. Of course, usually pitches are much more dense. It's usually between 15 to 30 slides with a lot of data, with a lot of thinking. Here it's a very, very simplified version. So let's imagine that a data team has done an analysis and has found out that user segment X is churning on mobile much higher than other user segment. And I want to create a mission team to address that issue. And I also know that those users are not performing the top retention correlated action in their first week, such as adding password, auto-logging with Dashlane. So my goal is to build early experiences on mobile to allow users to get started and to not churn on the first week. Well, I have an objective, which is pretty clear: get mobile users set up and using Dashlane. I have a few KRs, decreasing week churn on mobile, increasing key action performing in 7 days. And I'm linking that to the company OKR we had earlier, because it will be much easier to measure the first week retention impact than to measure direct B2C revenue. And so I will assess the success of my mission based on my OKR, but I will explain to the exec team how it is related to the company OKRs. About team strategy, of course, when I go pitch my idea to investors, I cannot just ask them to give me money and time just by telling them I will solve this issue and that's it. I usually have to explain a bit how I intend to do that. And so we are iterating currently on what we call an OKR tower, which goes from very high level to low level. So there is the vision, there is some pillars, some strategies, some tactics, and some KPI to measure the success of the tactics, and then of course the care of the team. This allows to have a discussion at different stages with different stakeholders in something that makes sense together, and in the pitch process maybe to adjust as we go, to adjust either at a very high level or either like, we don't believe that this tactic is the right one, and we agree with the general idea, but we disagree with the specific tactics, so we would like you to work on that. Of course, risk and mitigation. Well, an example is maybe user segment X just have a lower intent, which is why they churn higher. So mitigation can be to have the product research team go and talk with users from the user segment X to prove that no, actually they have the same intent, so it must be something else. Well, maybe it will be hard because we don't know why those users are churning more, so we'll have to experiment. So what we can do is to do user testing, is to try to avoid implementing everything before getting some insights. And of course, quantified impact. So here I have not done the exercise of quantifying the impact, but we have to take some assumption, we have to involve the data team, and as I said, it's help balancing the company's efforts. And impacts can be about revenue, but also about image, about technical risk mitigation. That's why prioritization is so difficult. Moving on, staffing. I will go a bit faster because I'm running out of time. But how many people do I need for the team? And now is the time to do an investment decision. Well, actually not quite yet, because the pitch process is for new mission teams, but at any point in time, we have plenty of missions who are working. So what we do is that we have a quarterly rodeo. It's once a quarter. It's basically the same thing as a pitch process, but for mission teams that are running currently. So we will review the wins and the setbacks. We will review if we want to continue, if we need more staffing, if we need less staffing, sometimes happens more rarely. And we review that once a quarter. Once we have done that, so we are in a good place to actually do finally the prioritization. We have the pitch processes who describe the new missions. We have the rodeo who allowed us to get a refresh on what we are working on currently, what is where we have some wins, where we have some setbacks, and so we can decide what do we do for the next quarter. So it's a quarterly exercise that we do. Last time the way it worked is that we built 4 different scenarios with different assumptions, with different strategies. We did staffing for each scenarios. We looked at the impacts. If we do scenario A, it means that this team cannot start. Then the exec team meet and discuss and come up with the 5th scenario, which is in between some of the scenario, and we are there. We can start working. So we can do the quarter kickoff. That's a very important point because, as I said, I have found prioritization to be very frustrating because some people will not get their mission approved, some people will get their mission stops, some people will get their mission with reduced resources, and you have 100% of the company who is who really love the product and who is aligned with the vision and who cares, basically, who cares. So it's very important to communicate a lot. I think it's very important to communicate a lot. To what we try to do is to be very transparent, to explain the whole process, to explain all the rationale of the different decisions, and to communicate first with the teams impacted, especially the team who will stop or have their scope reduced before we do a company-wide communication. And then it's time to start and stop the mission teams so the quarter can begin. And finally, how we track and share progress. So here we could discuss about that for a long time, much more than 1 minute, but very quickly at Dashlane, what we do is that we have sprint reviews. That's not very original, but it's very important. We have a sprint dashboard, which is a Confluence page with a summary of each mission sprints, so anyone can go and look where we are and ask questions. And we have OKR check-in in Perdue. That's a tool to track OKRs. Very important, we have tunnel demos. That's super important to be able to demo the work done by the teams. And we have internal testing, obviously, and celebrating success and also failure when we learn something out of it. So in terms of closing notes, thanks a lot for the time you've given me. It's hard to do a presentation over Zoom, so I hope you liked it as much as possible. If there is one thing I'd like you to take away from this session, beyond, of course, trying Dashlane and using that 6 months premium code, of course, there is one thing, it will be what I said earlier, which is frustration in the prioritization process should not be only viewed as a negative things. Of course, it's good to iterate and to improve the process, but if you have a team with 100% people who cares about the product, you will have a team who will get frustrated during the prioritization process. And it's important, I think, to be transparent about that, because, well, acknowledging that is already a good first step to make the process easier. Thank you very much. And if there is any question, feel free to ask on anything.